So apparently when your husband says his new coworker needs extra mentoring after hours, what he really means is, she needs mentoring in our bed with our Egyptian cotton sheets while I'm pulling 12-hour shifts at the hospital. Hi, I'm Winter Blake, and welcome to the most expensive education I never signed up for. Learning that 12 years of marriage can vanish faster than hand sanitizer in a pediatric ward. You know that moment when you realize you've been starring in your own personal episode of Cheaters, except nobody told you the cameras were rolling? Yeah, that was my Tuesday. Picture this, Austin, Texas, March 2024. I'm a 38-year-old trauma nurse who thought the biggest drama in my life would be handling rowdy spring breakers at Del Seaton Medical Center. Turns out the real trauma was happening in my own 4-bedroom suburban paradise in Cedar Park, where my husband Camden was apparently running his own private consulting business. And by consulting, I mean horizontally consulting with a 26-year-old developer named Tegan Morrison. Camden Blake, my soon-to-be ex, is 41, manages IT systems for a mid-sized tech company downtown, and has the emotional intelligence of a Windows 95 error message. For 12 years, I thought his biggest flaws were leaving dirty dishes in the sink and insisting, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Turns out, his real weakness was blonde 20-somethings who batted their eyelashes at him during code reviews. The irony is almost cinematic. I discovered this whole mess because Camden suddenly became Mr. Helpful Husband. After 12 years of me practically begging him to show interest in my work stories, suddenly he was asking detailed questions about my schedule. What time do you get off Thursday? Are you sure you have to work that weekend shift? Don't you think you're taking too many night shifts, honey? I thought he'd finally developed concern for my work-life balance. Adorable, right? What he'd actually developed was a timetable for when the coast was clear for Operation Mentorship. Because apparently, effective mentoring requires total privacy, romantic lighting, and absolutely zero wives walking in unexpectedly. The red flags were waving faster than a NASCAR checkered flag, but I was too busy saving lives to notice my marriage flatlining. Camden started working late, at least 3 nights a week. His company suddenly had an unprecedented number of urgent projects that required weekend attention. And somehow, these projects always seemed to involve his newest team member, Tegan, who apparently needed extraordinary one-on-one guidance. She's really struggling with the transition from her previous job, Camden would explain, looking as sincere as a politician on election day. Reed thinks I should take her under my wing. You know how it is in tech. If you don't support the newbies, they'll never make it. Reed Patterson, by the way, is Camden's boss, a 45-year-old straight shooter who runs their department like a well-oiled machine and has zero tolerance for office politics. Keep Reed in mind. He becomes important later, in ways that made my revenge infinitely more satisfying. But back to Camden's Oscar-worthy performance as Mentor of the Year. Suddenly, his phone was constantly buzzing with work emergencies. He'd vanish into his home office for hours, speaking in hushed tones about system integrations and database optimizations. The man who used to binge Netflix until his eyes bled was now supposedly so dedicated to his job that he needed work calls during dinner, during my rare evenings off, and even during our Sunday morning coffee ritual that we'd maintained for over a decade. The turning point came on a rainy February evening when I got off shift early due to a staffing change. I walked into our house, our beautiful house with the white picket fence and the mortgage we split 50-50, and found a second set of car keys on the counter. Keys to a silver Honda Civic that definitely wasn't mine and definitely wasn't Camden's black Tacoma. When I asked about it, Camden didn't even look up from his laptop. "Oh, that's Tegan's spare set," he said. "She's been having car trouble, and I offered to help her out with rides to work while she gets it fixed. She left the spare here in case of emergencies." Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the moment I officially became the wife who got played harder than a fiddle at a bluegrass festival. A spare key to our house for a coworker who apparently needed emergency access to our home. Because reliable transportation clearly requires access to married men's houses when their wives aren't around. But here's where my 12 years of marriage to Camden actually paid off. I know this man like I know the location of every vein in the human arm. When Camden lies, he scratches his left ear. When he's hiding something, he cleans obsessively. When he feels guilty, he overcompensates by being aggressively helpful. So when he started scratching his ear while deep cleaning our already spotless kitchen and offering to do my laundry for the first time since Clinton was president, I knew something was up. The question was, exactly how up? That's when I decided to conduct my own little investigation. Call it professional curiosity. After all, nurses are trained to notice when symptoms don't add up. And Camden's symptoms were painting a picture of a man suffering from something, but it wasn't overwork. I started small. Casual questions about Tegan. What was her background? Where did she go to school? How was she fitting in with the team? Camden's answers were interesting. Tegan was brilliant, ambitious, reminded him of himself when he was starting out. She had fresh perspectives on old problems. She was really bringing new energy to the department. The way he talked about her wasn't how you talk about training a new employee. It was how you talk about someone you're falling for. And that's when I realized my husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was having a full-blown emotional affair that had crossed every possible line. But here's the thing about being married to someone for 12 years. You learn patience, strategy, and that sometimes the best revenge is letting someone hang themselves with their own rope while you stand back and take notes. So I smiled, nodded, and started planning the most epic anniversary celebration our suburban neighborhood had ever seen. Now, here's where Camden's career in IT became both his greatest asset and his ultimate downfall. The man who could secure entire corporate networks apparently never heard of clearing his browser history. What I found on our shared iPad was more detailed than a Netflix documentary. 8 months of evidence, people. 8 months. From July 2023 to March 2024, all meticulously documented in his search history. Email drafts, and my personal favorite, his Google Calendar, which he'd forgotten was synced to our family account. Because nothing says covert affair like scheduling database meeting with T every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m., right when I happen to be working night shifts. But the real kicker? The restaurant reservations. Camden Blake, the man who considered Olive Garden fine dining and thought Red Lobster too fancy for a Tuesday, had been making reservations at places like Uchi, Swert, and Jeff. Restaurants I'd been hinting about for years, bookmarked on Instagram, while Camden insisted we could just order pizza and watch Netflix. Apparently, Tegan's palate was more sophisticated than his wife's. Who knew? The Google Photos account was particularly enlightening. Suddenly, Camden had developed an interest in photography, specifically photos of wine glasses, sunset dinners, and work conference hotels in San Antonio and Dallas. Because nothing says professional development like weekend getaways to boutique hotels with infinity pools and couples spa packages. My favorite discovery was a draft email he'd never sent titled, Weekend Agenda. It included items like Show Tegan the Riverwalk, wine tasting at Fancy Vineyard, and Sunday, brunch before heading back. This is the same man who spent our last 3 anniversaries asking if we could just stay in and order Thai food because restaurants were too crowded. But the absolute pièce de résistance? Finding out that Camden had given Tegan a key to our house. Not just any key. He'd had a custom key made at Home Depot, complete with a little purple key cover, because purple is her favorite color. I found the receipt in his wallet while looking for our insurance cards. $43 for a custom key and key cover for his coworker who supposedly needed emergency access for work projects. The level of disrespect was honestly impressive. There I was, working 60-hour weeks keeping people alive, coming home exhausted to find evidence that my husband was essentially running a bed and breakfast for his side piece. She had her own key, her own parking spot in our driveway, and apparently her own set of Egyptian cotton sheets, because Camden had been doing a lot more laundry lately. The breaking point came when I found the Valentine's Day receipt. February 14th, 2024. The day Camden told me he was swamped with a system upgrade and couldn't do dinner. The day I spent alone with Chinese takeout and a Netflix documentary about serial killers. Want to know what Camden was actually doing? Dropping $300 at a jewelry store in the Domain, buying something called a sterling silver infinity necklace with personalized engraving. The engraving? N2T, forever growing together. Let me paint you a picture of the rage I felt in that moment. I was standing in our master bedroom, staring at a receipt for jewelry that cost more than my monthly student loan payment, purchased for another woman, on the day my husband told me he was too busy for romantic nonsense. The same bedroom, where I'd been sleeping alone for months, wondering why Camden suddenly preferred the couch, claiming he didn't want to wake me when he got home late from work. But here's where being a nurse comes in handy. We're trained to stay calm under pressure, so instead of confronting him right away, I decided to conduct a more thorough examination. I created a timeline, cross-referenced his work schedule with his actual location data. Thank you. Find my iPhone family sharing, and documented everything with the same methodical precision I reserve for patient charts. The pattern was beautiful in its stupidity. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Camden's phone pinged from the same apartment complex on the east side of Austin, definitely not his downtown office. Weekend conferences coincided perfectly with romantic getaway packages at the exact hotels his phone was located at. Working late nights that ended at residential addresses, not corporate buildings. The man had created a digital paper trail more detailed than the Watergate investigation, and had no idea I was following every breadcrumb. My personal favorite was the night I decided to test his story. Camden said he was working late on a critical system patch and wouldn't be home until after midnight. So I ordered pizza delivery to his office building at 9 p.m., pretending I wanted to surprise him with dinner. 20 minutes later, the delivery guy called me back. The building was locked. Security said no one from Camden's company had badged in after 6 p.m. Meanwhile, Camden's phone was pinging from Tegan's apartment, where, I'm assuming they were working, on a very different kind of system integration. The final straw came when I overheard Camden on a phone call in our backyard, thinking I was asleep after a particularly brutal shift. He was planning a weekend in Fredericksburg for their 8-month anniversary. 8 months. While I was counting down to our 12-year wedding anniversary in March, my husband was celebrating relationship milestones with someone else. I can't believe it's been 8 months already, he said, his voice soft and romantic, a tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. I know this situation isn't ideal, but I think we're ready to take the next step. I'm going to tell Winter soon. I promise. Right after our anniversary. I don't want to ruin the day for her, but then we can be together properly. Standing there in my scrubs, exhausted from 12 hours of keeping other people's families together, listening to my husband plan his future with another woman, I felt something shift inside me. Not heartbreak. I'd moved past that weeks ago. This was pure, crystallized determination. Camden thought he was being merciful, waiting until after our anniversary to destroy my life. How considerate of him, to let me enjoy one last celebration before pulling the rug out from under our entire marriage. But here's what Camden didn't know about his wife of 12 years. I don't just save lives for a living. I'm also really, really good at strategic planning. And I had just decided that our anniversary celebration was going to be unforgettable, just not in the way he expected. You know what they say about nurses, we're excellent at triage. We assess the damage, prioritize the most critical issues, and execute a treatment plan with surgical precision. Well, my marriage was officially a code blue, and it was time for some emergency intervention. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, so I did something that 12 years ago would have horrified me. I hired a private investigator. Not some sketchy guy from a strip mall, but a proper investigator recommended by Sarah, one of the divorce attorneys who occasionally consulted at our hospital for domestic violence cases. Best $300 I ever spent. Within a week, I had professional documentation of everything I'd suspected, and several things I hadn't. Tegan Morrison wasn't just Camden's coworker. She was his project. He'd been systematically grooming her since she started at the company, using his position as senior staff to create opportunities for mentorship that crossed every professional boundary imaginable. But here's the plot twist that made my revenge plan infinitely more satisfying. Camden's company had an extremely strict anti-fraternization policy, especially regarding relationships between supervisory staff and subordinates. The kind of policy that doesn't just get you fired, it gets you fired with cause, meaning no severance, no positive references, and potential legal liability. Even better, Camden's boss, Reed Patterson, is a straight arrow who takes these policies seriously because his previous company got sued for creating a hostile work environment when management looked the other way on inappropriate relationships. Reed had specifically mentioned during the company holiday party that workplace affairs were career suicide and anyone engaging in them would face immediate termination. The private investigator also uncovered something delicious. Tegan had been using company resources for personal purposes. Company laptops for personal projects, company credit cards for dinners and hotels, and company time for activities that definitely weren't coding. She'd even been billing the company for overtime during hours she was documented at romantic restaurants with Camden. Armed with this information, I started planning what would become known in our neighborhood as the anniversary ambush of 2024. But I needed to be strategic. One wrong move, and Camden could spin this as his vindictive wife destroying his career out of jealousy. I needed him to destroy himself publicly with witnesses, in a way that left no room for sympathy or revision. That's when I decided to throw the biggest, most public anniversary celebration our suburban social circle had ever seen. I started by calling Camden's work wife, his actual work colleague, Janet from HR, who I'd met at several company events over the years. Janet, bless her heart, was thrilled when I called to discuss planning a surprise anniversary celebration for Camden. I want to invite everyone who's important in his professional life, I told her, playing the devoted wife perfectly, especially his current team. I know he's been working so closely with everyone lately, and I'd love to show my appreciation for all their hard work. Janet was more than happy to provide contact information for Camden's entire department, including his boss Reed and the newest team member, Tegan Morrison, personally invited as Camden's valued colleague. Next, I booked the private event room at Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill, the same restaurant where Camden had taken me for our first anniversary 12 years ago. The irony was too perfect to resist. I hired a photographer, ordered a 3-tier anniversary cake, and sent out elegant invitations to 65 people. The guest list was a masterpiece of strategic planning. All of Camden's coworkers, including Reed and his entire management chain, and Tegan Morrison, personally invited as Camden's newest and most celebrated team member, our neighbors from the Homeowners Association, my nursing colleagues who'd met Camden at hospital events, Camden's college buddies and their wives, both sets of parents, my sister Riley and her husband, who happened to be an employment attorney. I also made sure to mention in each invitation that I had special announcements and appreciation to share about Camden's recent professional achievements and collaborations. Camden was suspicious when I told him about the party. "Isn't this a little elaborate for an anniversary?" he asked, scratching that telltale left ear. "I mean, we usually just do dinner and a movie." "Honey," I said, using my most loving wife voice, "we've been married for 12 years. I want to celebrate everything we've built together, and I want to thank all the people who've supported your career, especially your current team. I know you've been putting in so much extra time with them lately." His face went 3 shades paler. "You invited my coworkers?" "Of course," I said sweetly, "including that sweet girl Tegan who you've been mentoring. I'm so excited to finally meet her properly and thank her for all the hard work she's been doing with you." The look of pure panic in Camden's eyes was worth 12 years of marriage right there. But I wasn't done. I spent the next 2 weeks playing the perfect wife, preparing for our anniversary celebration, while Camden slowly descended into a nervous breakdown. He kept trying to suggest we cancel the party, claiming he didn't want to impose on people's weekend plans or make a big fuss. "Nonsense," I'd reply cheerfully. "Everyone's already RSVP'd. Reed even said he's looking forward to meeting me properly and hearing about all your recent project successes. And Tegan sent the sweetest note saying she's honored to be included in such a special celebration." Meanwhile, I was preparing my own special presentation. I'd compiled everything into a beautiful digital slideshow titled Camden's Year of Growth and New Partnerships. It included photos of every restaurant receipt, every hotel booking, every romantic location where Camden had been working late with his mentee. I also prepared individual gift bags for each guest, including printed copies of the company's anti-fraternization policy, Camden's false expense reports, and a timeline of his professional development activities with Tegan. The pièce de résistance was a custom anniversary cake with 2 sets of figurines on top, a traditional bride and groom, plus a third figure I'd specially ordered to represent all the important people in Camden's professional life. 3 days before the party, Camden made one final attempt to derail my plans. "Winter, honey, maybe we should postpone this. I'm feeling overwhelmed at work, and I don't think I can handle a big celebration right now." I gave him my most understanding smile. "Oh, sweetheart, you've been working so hard lately, especially with all those evening projects with Tegan. This party is exactly what you need, a chance to relax and celebrate everything you've accomplished this year. Besides, everyone's already cleared their schedules. Reed even said he's bringing his wife and his brother, who's visiting from Dallas." The mention of Reed's brother was just a little bonus cruelty. Turns out, Marcus Patterson is a successful architect who's been divorced for 2 years and specifically asked if any of Reed's colleagues were single. I'd mentioned I might know someone who would be available soon. As the countdown to our anniversary party began, Camden grew more anxious by the day. He started cleaning compulsively, called in sick to work twice, and kept asking oddly specific questions about the guest list and seating arrangements. "Will Tegan be sitting near Reed?" he asked casually while stress cleaning our already spotless kitchen for the 3rd time that week. "Oh, I've arranged for her to sit at our table," I replied sweetly. "Right between you and Reed, actually. I thought it would be nice for Reed to see firsthand what a wonderful mentoring relationship looks like." So Camden's stress cleaning intensified to the point where our house looked like it was staged for a real estate, showing March 15th, 2024, the day that will go down in Cedar Park neighborhood history as the night Winter Blake threw the most entertaining anniversary party anyone had ever witnessed. I spent the morning getting ready like I was preparing for the performance of a lifetime, because that's exactly what it was. I chose a stunning emerald green dress that Camden had always loved, got my hair and makeup done at the salon, and wore the diamond necklace he'd given me for our 10th anniversary. If I was going to destroy my marriage, I was going to look absolutely radiant doing it. Camden, meanwhile, looked like he was preparing for his own execution. He changed outfits 3 times, kept checking his phone nervously, and at one point I caught him Googling how to cancel last-minute events on his laptop. "You seem anxious." "Honey," I said sweetly while applying my lipstick. "Are you worried about something?" No, just, you know how I get with big social events. I'm not great at being the center of attention." "Oh, don't worry," I replied with a smile that could have powered the entire city grid. "You won't be the center of attention for long." The party was scheduled to start at 7 p.m., and guests began arriving right on time. I positioned myself at the entrance like the perfect hostess, greeting everyone with warm hugs and enthusiastic introductions. Camden stood beside me, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else on Earth. Reed Patterson arrived at 7:15 with his wife Sandra and his brother Marcus, who turned out to be even more attractive than his LinkedIn photos suggested. Reed was in a great mood, praising Camden's recent work performance and thanking me for including the whole team in our celebration. "Camden's been putting in incredible hours lately," Reed said while Camden's face grew increasingly pale. "Really dedicated to bringing our new team member up to speed. Speaking of which, where is Tegan? I'm curious to see how she's settling in." "Oh, she should be here any moment," I replied brightly. "I'm so excited for everyone to see their working relationship in action." Tegan arrived at 7:30, wearing a stunning black dress that was definitely not purchased on a junior developer's salary. She looked around nervously, clearly not expecting such a large crowd. and made a beeline for Camden with the familiarity of someone who'd been making herself very comfortable in his personal space. "Camden," she said a little too intimately before catching herself. "Congratulations on your anniversary." I swooped in immediately. "Tegan, finally, we meet properly. I'm Winter, Camden's wife. I've heard so much about your collaborative work together." The evening proceeded with painful perfection. I made sure Tegan sat directly between Camden and Reed at our main table, exactly as promised. Camden looked like he was attending his own wake, while Tegan kept shooting him confused glances, wondering why their secret relationship was suddenly being celebrated publicly. After dinner, I stood up and tapped my wineglass for attention. The room fell silent as everyone turned to hear the anniversary toast. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight to celebrate 12 amazing years of marriage," I began, my voice carrying perfectly across the room. Marriage is about trust, commitment, and supporting each other through life's challenges. It's about building something together that's stronger than what either person could create alone. Camden was gripping, his napkin so hard his knuckles were white. "But tonight isn't just about celebrating our marriage," I continued, pulling out my prepared notes. "I also want to recognize some very special working relationships that have developed this year. Camden has been putting in extraordinary hours lately, showing incredible dedication to mentoring and hands-on training." I turned to address Tegan directly. "Tegan, honey, I particularly want to thank you for all the extra time you've been spending with Camden. The late nights, the weekend projects, the special conferences. Your collaboration has been so intensive." Tegan looked confused. Camden looked nauseous. Reed was starting to look very interested in where this was going. In fact, I continued, "I have a little slideshow I prepared to showcase just how much time and energy Camden has been investing in professional development this year." The room's attention turned to the projection screen as my carefully curated presentation began. The first slide was titled, "Camden's Year of Growth, a Timeline of Dedication." What followed was 8 months of evidence presented as a celebration of Camden's commitment to excellence. Restaurant receipts from romantic dinners, labeled as working dinners with team member Tegan. Hotel bookings for professional conferences that coincided perfectly with couples' spa packages. Photos of wine tastings and sunset dinners, tagged as client entertainment and team building. The room was dead silent, except for soft gasps and whispers as people realized what they were seeing. Reed's expression went from confusion to horror to professional fury in about 30 seconds. Other coworkers were pulling out their phones, either to record the chaos or start updating their LinkedIn profiles to distance themselves from the impending disaster. "But wait," I announced cheerfully. "There's more." The next slides detailed Tegan's use of company resources for personal expenses, including credit card statements showing charges for romantic restaurants and hotels during overtime hours. I'd cross-referenced everything with her timesheet submissions, showing a pattern of billing the company for personal time. "And finally," I said, my voice still bright and celebratory, "I have some very special announcements to make." I reached into my purse and pulled out 2 sets of documents. First, "Camden, honey, I know how much you value transparency in professional relationships, so I've prepared copies of your collaboration timeline for Reed and HR to review for compliance purposes." Reed's face had now turned a fascinating shade of red as he realized the legal liability his company was facing. "And second," I continued, pulling out the divorce papers, "as my anniversary gift to Camden, I'm officially releasing him from the constraints of marriage so he can pursue his professional development opportunities without any conflicts of interest." I handed Camden the divorce papers in front of 65 witnesses, including his entire management chain, our parents, and half our neighborhood association. "The best part," I announced to the stunned room, "everything's already been filed with the court. And since Camden chose to use our joint assets to fund his professional development activities, the division of property was pretty straightforward. I get the house, the savings, and the retirement accounts. Camden gets his freedom and whatever severance package his company deems appropriate." Reed stood up abruptly. "Camden, Tegan, I need to see both of you in my office first thing Monday morning. Actually, forget Monday. I need to see you both tomorrow morning. This party is over for you two." The room erupted in chaos as guests realized they'd just witnessed the most epic public divorce announcement in suburban Texas history. Camden sat frozen in his chair while Tegan tried to quietly slip out the back door, only to be intercepted by several curious neighbors who suddenly had many questions about her relationship with their friend's husband. My parents looked shocked. Camden's parents looked mortified. My sister Riley was openly applauding while her attorney husband took notes for what would undoubtedly become his favorite dinner party story for years to come. But the most satisfying moment came when Marcus Patterson approached me as the evening was winding down. "That was the most impressive display of strategic planning I've ever witnessed," he said with genuine admiration. "When this dust settles, would you like to have dinner sometime? Somewhere public, with full transparency and definitely not a working dinner." 6 months later, I'm sitting in my beautiful 4-bedroom house in Cedar Park, the same house Camden thought he'd be sharing with his new girlfriend, sipping wine on the back patio and reflecting on how dramatically life can change when you stop being a supporting character in your own story. Let me catch you up on where everyone landed after the anniversary ambush of 2024 became Cedar Park's most talked about social event. Camden, well, he learned some valuable lessons about corporate compliance and professional boundaries. Reed fired him the Monday after our party, citing violation of company anti-fraternization policies, misuse of company resources, and conduct detrimental to workplace culture. The firing was with cause, which meant no severance package, no positive references, and a very awkward explanation for future employers about why his 12-year career at a reputable tech company ended so abruptly. He's currently working at a much smaller company for about 60% of his former salary and living in a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Turns out when you lose your house, your wife, and your career all at once, your dating market value takes a nosedive. Who could have predicted that? Tegan's career arc was even more spectacularly short-lived. She wasn't just fired for the affair. She was terminated for fraudulent expense reporting and timesheet falsification. Billing romantic dinners as client entertainment while claiming overtime for the exact same hours tends to attract attention from accounting. She moved back to Dallas to live with her parents while she figures out how to rebuild a career after getting fired for cause from her first professional job. The irony is delicious. Camden thought he was upgrading to someone younger and more thrilling, but Tegan apparently only wanted him while he represented financial stability and career momentum. Once he became an unemployed man in a studio, her enthusiasm for their deep connection evaporated faster than morning dew in August. Reed, meanwhile, became an unlikely ally. He was furious about the liability Camden had exposed the company to and grateful that I'd brought everything to light before it turned into a legal nightmare. Reed's brother Marcus and I have been dating for 4 months now, and the relationship is everything I'd hoped for. My marriage to Camden wasn't honest, respectful, or rooted in real compatibility. It had been convenience and inertia. Marcus treats me as an equal, values my career, and actually cares about my life beyond what I can do for him. Revolutionary concepts. He also thought my strategic dismantling of Camden's duplicitous life was brilliant rather than petty, which really highlights the difference between a man who respects women and one who merely tolerates them. The most satisfying discovery, though, was how much of myself I'd been shrinking to accommodate Camden's mediocrity. For 12 years, I'd made myself smaller, bending around his schedule, accepting his lack of interest in my ambitions, convincing myself that comfortable equaled happy. Turns out, when you stop expending all your energy managing someone else's emotional immaturity, you suddenly have bandwidth for your own growth. I've been accepted into a nurse practitioner program starting this fall. I'm training for my first marathon, and I've started dating someone who finds my intelligence attractive rather than intimidating. The divorce settlement was gloriously straightforward. Because Camden had used our joint assets to fund his affair, romantic dinners, hotel rooms, jewelry for another woman, the court viewed his financial infidelity unfavorably. I got the house, the savings, the retirement accounts, and even Camden's beloved Tacoma, which I promptly sold and used the proceeds as a down payment on a new Honda Pilot. Camden got the freedom I promised at the anniversary party. Freedom from the mortgage. Freedom from a comfortable life he'd taken for granted. Freedom from a wife who actually loved him despite his flaws. And freedom to start over at 41 with reduced circumstances and a reputation for professional misconduct. The neighborhood response has been overwhelmingly supportive. Apparently, most people don't appreciate men who lie to their wives while expecting those same wives to host celebratory gatherings for their accomplishments. Several neighbors admitted they'd suspected something was off about Camden's frequent work meetings, but didn't want to interfere. I've become a local legend as the woman who threw the most epic divorce party in Texas history. Women stop me at Target to say they wish they'd had my courage. Men go out of their way to assure me they'd never treat their wives the way Camden treated me. The whole experience taught me that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. I don't hate Camden anymore. I honestly feel sorry for him. He had a good life, a loving wife, financial security, a stable career, and he threw it all away for the thrill of sneaking around with a coworker who was using him as much as he was using her. Mostly I feel grateful. Grateful I found out before wasting more years. Grateful for friends and family who supported me through the chaos. And grateful that I'm capable of handling whatever life throws at me with intelligence, grace, and just the right amount of strategic malice. As my new favorite saying goes, the best revenge is a life well lived. But the second best revenge? Serving divorce papers at your anniversary party in front of your husband's boss.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.